Based on extensive scrutiny of primary sources from Nazi and jihadist ideologues, our guest today argues that jihadist anti Semitism stems from Nazi ideology. Now, many people may argue with him, but he has excellent credentials in order to make a statement like this. He holds a Hillel Feinberg Chair in Holocaust Studies in the Eckerman Center for Holocaust Studies at the University of Texas in Dallas. He is lecturer in many universities of the United States and Europe, author of dozens of books on history of the anti-Semitism and Holocaust, hundreds of papers, and his name is Professor David Patterson. Professor, welcome to Chicago Jewish Cafe.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for stopping by. My pleasure. So, Professor, I thought that the savagery of this Hamas attack, on Israel, and not the first time, stems from their reading of Quran and Hadith, where the last hour of before the great whatever happens is going to be slaughtering of Jews right and left with nobody remaining. So, but you say that actually stems from Nazi ideology, please.
Well, the Nazi ideology has a significant influence on jihadist thinking, particularly from the time of the founding of the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928. Most of the jihadist movements in the world today, from Africa to the Islamic Republic of Iran, stem from the Muslim Brotherhood. That's kind of the genealogy that I trace. So this modern jihadism is, like the Nazis, is a purist movement. The influenced by Wahhabism from the 18th century on, and then Salafism, back to the pure roots of the pure Islam. In a similar way, the Nazis understood purity of blood also as purity of ideology. They claim that the Aryan blood is and the Aryan spirit is poisoned not just by Jews but by Judaism. And if you look at the Hamas charter, you see the same language. So for both of them, the premise is not that all Jews are evil, but all evil is Jewish. So there's humanity itself is at stake in the extermination of the Jews. I want to add that in the book, I'm careful to distinguish between jihadists and all Muslims. Not all Muslims are jihadists. I mean, when you say Islam, you're talking about a very broad range of views, like Christianity or Judaism. But all jihadists identify as Muslims, okay? And they do turn to the scriptures of their tradition, the Quran and Hadith, as you mentioned, to justify their position. They also turn to the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is this, the infamous fake forgery document published in Russia in 1903, supposedly, the notes taken at a secret meeting of the world Jewish leaders plotting to take over the world. So Hitler quotes the protocols in Mein Kampf. In the Hamas charter, they quote the protocols of the Elders of Zion. So you have these points of connection. And of course, the individual who is really the strongest bond that connects the two is Hajj Amin al-Husseini. So the modern jihadist movement, like other totalitarian and terrorist movements, has a number of.
Who was al-Husseini?
It's very important to know how Haj Amin al-Husseini was. Uh, in 1922, Haj Amin al-Husseini was appointed Mufti of Jerusalem by Herbert Samuel, the head of the British Mandate government in Palestine. Al-Husseini had served in the Turkish army during the First World War. Nobody knows the exact extent of his involvement in the Armenian and Assyrian genocides, but he was on those sites. So when the British mandate was established in Palestine, he incited riots in 1920, uh, was tried in absentia, found guilty, and there was a lot of unrest among the Arabs. So Herbert Samuel thought he could appease the Arab population by giving al-Husseini a pardon and making him the religious leader of the Muslims in Palestine. So al-Husseini was notorious for inciting violence. When the Nazis came into power, he immediately made a visit to the new German consul, 1933, named Hermann Wolf, and immediately established a connection. In 1935, he met with the brother of Hassan al-Banna. Hassan al-Banna founded the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928. So the Brotherhood had a connection with al-Husseini.
In Egypt or in India?
Al-Banna founded it in Egypt,
In
but
Egypt.
he was inspired by Abdul al-Maududi, who was in India.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important connection also. In any case, in mid 1930s, Haj Amin al-Husseini is working with the Nazis and with the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood sent delegations to Nuremberg rallies, Nazi rallies in Germany. You understand? There's a Muslim Brotherhood delegation in the crowd with the SS.
Was it because of their anti-Jewishness, anti-Semitism, or because of their resistance to British mandate and
That's an
rule over them?
excellent question. Excellent question. Uh, it's it's both. The, um, the Nazis saw in the Arabs an ally against the British. Okay, the British were enemies of the Nazis, and the British were enemies of the Arabs. In 1936, the Nazis issued a statement. This is after the Nuremberg laws identifying, who's a Jew, saying the Arabs are not Jews. This is not about Jews, or it's not about Arabs. I'm sorry, not about Arabs. It's about
Meaning
Jews.
they excluded Arabs from the category of Semites.
Yes, they never shut down any
Because now
Muslim.
Arabs insist that they are Semites and therefore anti Semitism cannot apply to them. Charge.
Well, the yes, but the term anti-Semitism was coined in 1879 by Wilhelm Marr in order because he felt like the term Judenhass, Jew hatred, was too vulgar. Okay, so anti-Semitism is a term, uh, made up to replace the term Jew hatred. Okay, it is Jew hatred, and the Nazis know this. Haj Amin
Meaning
al-Husseini makes.
anti-Semites don't really hate Jews, the way the Christians hated Jews, but they hate Jews in a new way.
Yeah, well, yes, but the Christians hate the Jews as the ones who not only reject the new covenant, but who can endanger those who accept the new covenant. So the Christians, purged Christianity of what they call Judaizing. Um, the Nazis see in the Jews not just a threat to the soul, but the threat to the folk, the threat to the future of humanity, the
Because
threat to
Nazis
the
already
blood.
did not consider themselves to be Christians.
That's right. The most Christians went along with the Nazis, but the Nazis themselves did not understand themselves to be Christians,
In
at least
fact,
not at the.
following Nietzsche, as I understand, they considered Christianity just a poison that was produced, by Jews, that was spilled on Europe.
That's true of most of the Nazi ideologues. Yes, that's true.
So, I'm sorry for interrupting, but getting back to this connection between the Nazis and the jihadists.
Yes, well, Haj Amin had, as I said, made his first connection with the new Nazi regime when the Nazis came to power in 1933. The Nazis helped Haj Amin al-Husseini financially. The Nazis financed much of the Arab revolt in 1936. Adolf Eichmann went to Palestine and met with Haj Amin al-Husseini in 1937, about 2 weeks before al-Husseini had to flee once again, as he was now wanted again by the British for inciting the Arab revolt. Okay. He turns up April 1st, 1941, in Baghdad, where he's now officially on the Nazi payroll, and where he instigated a coup against the Iraqi British led government. Okay. It's called the Farhud. The coup lasted until the end of May. They took over for several weeks. The last day of May, first day of June, the British regained control. But before he left, al-Husseini incited another riot in Baghdad known as the Farhud. More than 600 Jews were killed. And as you know, Baghdad is one of the most ancient of the Jewish communities outside of Israel from the time of the first temple, or the destruction of the first temple. So he was fleeing again. November 28th, 1941, al-Husseini had his first meeting with Adolf Hitler. And in that meeting, according to his memoirs, al-Husseini and Hitler discussed ways of dealing with the Jewish problem in Palestine. And al-Husseini said he wanted to use the same means that Hitler was using. And he said, Hitler gave me the okay. All right.
But at that time, Hitler was not murdering Jews yet.
Well, this is November 28th, 1941.
Mm-hmm.
Operation Barbarossa.
So he met in November of 41.
Yeah, after.
Well, at that time already, the mass murders, in the Soviet Union and in Ukraine were taking place.
That's right. From June 22nd, 1941, the killing units, the Einsatzgruppen, as they're called, followed the army to the east, killing all the Jews they could find. Yeah. Throughout, from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Right. Okay, there were 4 divisions. And just a few months later, al-Husseini has his first meeting with Hitler. He went on to meet with Eichmann, Himmler, and others to discuss ways he could help with the extermination of the Jews in Europe. Al-Husseini did Arabic language propaganda broadcasts for the Nazis. He was famous for preaching that killing Jews pleases Allah. Whoever kills a Jew has a guaranteed place in paradise. Hamas teaches the same thing. So in 1943, he started organizing Muslim killing units in the Balkans. The most infamous one is called the Hanshar Division. and they went into operation in February 1944. So
Who did he recruit for those units in Europe?
most of them were uh, Muslims in the Balkans, Croatian, Albanian, most of them,
Muslims from Croatia
and Albania.
and
Yes, from the
Albania,
Balkans.
because Albania was the place where Jews were not murdered, were not killed. So what?
That's right. And there were of the more than 25,000 righteous Gentiles identified. There were 77, 78 Muslims, uh, the vast majority of whom were Albanians who helped Jews.
Yeah,
But
in
there,
fact, the number of Jews through the war in Albania increased more than doubled. I mean, it's not a few thousand, but
yes, no, that's right. Albania generally was a haven for the Jews at the time. But there were Albanian, al-Husseini was able to recruit some of the Albanian Muslims and Croatian Muslims into these all Muslim killing units. Uh, and Himmler wrote about ways in which Islam and National Socialism have so much in common. Uh, so they have their
Hitler wrote.
Himmler, Heinrich Himmler.
Himmler
Yeah.
also was a writer.
Well, he gave speeches. Let's put
He
it
gave
that way.
speeches
He
because
had
I
a
thought that he was not very well educated.
no, but he had a speech writer. He
Uh,
must have. I'm guessing that he had a speech writer.
right. Okay.
But the point is that they the 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 anti-Semitism, the exterminationist anti-Semitism, was so fundamental to Nazis and jihadists that it's a tie that binds the two together. Uh, it leads the jihadists to understand Hitler himself as a jihadist.
Uh-huh.
They were the Nazis were considering,
So,
but
so,
never.
so, so the central piece of so-called solution to Jewish problem is the murder of Jews, and that idea united the jihadists and the Nazis.
That is correct. That is correct. And it continues to unite the jihadists with those who continue to think in terms that the Nazis are thinking in. I mean, we put an end to the Third Reich, but there are still Nazis in the world, right? We,
But
we didn't get
what is amazing to me, and that is one of the reasons that I wanted to speak to you, is because among the supporters of these Nazi lovers, incredible number of leftist Jews in the United States,
yes,
marching
yes,
in Washington, in New York, in Los Angeles, everywhere.
yes. Uh, it's a different problem. It's connected, but it's the
But
problem
they're
unto
not
itself.
stupid. They're all educated. They're all from colleges, from universities.
Well, they are educated, but I'm not sure they know what they're supporting. I asked my colleagues. I live in academia, right? I asked them, and I asked my students, they're mostly graduate students, what are you pro if you're pro Hamas? Sometimes they'll say pro Palestinian, but not pro Hamas. But now, at this time, to be pro Palestinian is to be pro Hamas.
I mean,
At this,
90%, almost 90% of Palestinians fervently support Hamas today.
yeah, yes, everywhere in Gaza, West Bank, and beyond. Yes, that's correct. Uh, but I'm not sure they understand what I've just pointed out to you about the connection
Why
between
don't they
Hachemim.
understand? I mean, if you tell them, you're a source, you're an authority on the topic. In fact, what you just, some of the statements that you made cleared up my mind better than before I had thought about it. I mean, this connection on the method of solving Jewish problem,
Yeah.
to me, is a clear connection between Nazism and jihadism.
Yes. You remember when Hamas was sending kites over Israel with incendiary devices to start fires in fields, farm fields, and forests? They would have these big kites. They'd launch the kites, and the kites had a, I don't know, a fire igniting device. They'd drop the kite, and it would start fires. Many of the kites had swastikas on them. Had swastikas on them. So the the exterminationist Jew hatred, the language of demonizing.
They did not have hammer and sickle on it, right? They had swastika.
That's correct. Yes. But actually, that's actually a good question, a good point. Yeah. I mean, the Soviets hated Jews, right?
For starting, I'm sorry, it's not only Soviets, for starting
What?
Karl Marx, the idea of the beautiful future means disappearance of Jews.
Yes, and Marx said that. Yes, that is right. But
But the methods are different. For Marx, it was assimilation and disappearance, of religion.
yes, no. This is an important difference for the Christians, at least in principle, and for traditional Islam. Jews could convert
Hmm.
in principle.
Well, for Marx, it was not conversion. For Marx, it's just disappearance, assimilation, because it's
That's right.
disappearance of religion and disappearance of Jews.
Yes. It's yes. The process is similar. The Marxist ideology has some characteristics of a religion. You know.
Absolutely.
Uh, so
We know
yes.
the history. We know the march of history. I mean, if that's not a religious idea, I do not know what is.
Oh yes, it is a religious idea. It's with redemption at the
Mhm.
end.
Yes.
Ultimately, the utopia.
Mhm.
It's like heaven, paradise.
Returning to a paradise on the much higher level than we left it a long time ago.
Well, you can see how dangerous this is. How it's not just dangerous; it's murderous. It's murderous. But with the Nazis, there's no option to assimilate because as I said, all evil is Jewish. Every Jew, whether he is religious or not, will test Judaism positive. So it's like a disease. And the Nazis called Judaism a contagion. So every case of the disease has to be eliminated for the sake of the folk, for the sake of humanity. So in October 1942, the Nazis, a group of them went into Tromsø, Norway, 220 miles north of the Arctic Circle, to get 17 Jews that were there. That is not scapegoating. You don't have to go to the Arctic if all you need is a scapegoat. It's not xenophobia. It's not envy. It has what I call this metaphysical dimension of evil, evil, evil. Sayyid Qutb, very important name, who was the main ideologue from the Muslim Brotherhood, by far the most influential jihadist ideologue. The Ayatollah Khomeini translated Qutb's works into Farsi. Qutb,
When did he live and where?
Qutb was Egyptian. He lived from around 1906 until 1966. He was executed by Nasser in 1966. Nasser, when Nasser came to power in 52, he saw the Brotherhood as a threat to his power.
Well, Sisi to this day sees Hamas as a threat.
Yeah, Sisi, Mubarak, I mean that line of them viewed the Brotherhood as a threat. In fact, Sisi has outlawed the Brotherhood.
But
Right.
I'm sorry, please remember where you stop, because I want to just say that the Nasser was closely affiliated with many Nazis that found asylum in Egypt.
Oh yeah. No, the Middle East was a destination for thousands of Nazi war criminals.
Egypt, Syria, they all found a good place
Yeah,
there.
that's right. Uh,
So why would he kill another Nazi lover? I mean, there's a disagreement on some other issue, a
no,
woman to
because
share or something like this.
yeah, no, Saeed Qutb, the Muslim Brotherhood ideologue, was pushing for a theocracy unruled by Sharia,
Uh-huh.
this kind of government, and that was not. I mean, Nasser had an alliance, for example, with the Soviets,
Yeah.
right?
He wanted Arab socialism.
Yes, yes. He was a national. He was a national socialist. He was
Right.
a nationalist
National
and a
socialism.
socialist.
Right.
So he wanted to be able to interact with the West, whereas Saeed Qutb saw everything in the West, including Marxism, as a corruption of Islam. So he's got to get rid of Qutb. Now, among the Nazi war criminals who found haven in Egypt was Hajj Amin al-Husseini. Al-Husseini turned up in Cairo in June 1947. No, 1946. I'm sorry, June 1946, where he was welcomed by Hassan al-Banna and Saeed Qutb, the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood.
What until that point he was in Germany?
He fled Germany. He was hiding in France.
In France, he was hiding, not openly walking around like Hussein.
No, he found well a number of the war criminals found haven in some places in France, as a matter of fact.
Uh-huh.
And there were those in France, including people in the church, who helped them to get out of Europe. So Al Husseini goes to Egypt, becomes, solidifies his tie with the Brotherhood. He brings in one of a distant relative named Yasser Arafat under his wing, has him trained by former Nazis and indoctrinated by the Brotherhood. Uh, when Arafat founded Fatah, the self-identified terrorist wing of now PLO. PLO was actually established after Fatah. Fatah was established in 1959, PLO in 1964. But Haj Amin al-Husseini was Arafat's mentor and guide in the creation of Fatah.
I did not know that.
And yes, and Qutb and al-Husseini were very tight. Al-Husseini managed to escape Egypt and died, I think, 1974 in Lebanon. But Qutb didn't. I mean, Qutb was arrested and executed by Nasser. Um, Meanwhile, as I said, Qutb had a huge influence on all of the jihadist thinkers after him, among whom was Ahmed Yassin, the founder of Hamas. Right. Ahmed Yassin was originally from Egypt, went to Israel, what they called Palestine, in the 70s to set up, Islamic Center of Learning and activities. So with the first Intifada in 1987, he saw his chance to get a foothold.
But Shimon Peres was helping him in setting up his charities in Israel.
Yes, yes, unfortunately.
And it continued until recently.
Well, this is the what the big mistake of people who liberal thinking, well-intended people on the left, is they think everyone in the world thinks like they do, is rational. Uh, if you're kind to them, they'll be kind to you. You can reason with them, but they they cannot comprehend the mindset, the categories that shape the thinking of someone like Ahmed Yassin. Ahmed Yassin, who declared with al Husseini that killing Jews is an act of devotion to God.
This is the guy that couldn't walk, huh?
Yeah, he was in the wheelchair. He came to an untimely end in 2004. He was assassinated. Just say it what it is, call it what it is. But I mean, he identified Hamas as a branch of the Brotherhood. The Hamas charter says they are Muslim Brotherhood, right? Uh, the Hamas charter, as I mentioned and we touched on earlier, invokes three holy texts to legitimize their ideology. One is the Quran, the other are texts from the Hadith, and the third is protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Wow.
Uh, so
By
they
the way, are they using the protocols that were published in Lebanon, or they have their own thing?
uh, the Lebanon edition, I think it was 1963,
Mm-hmm.
translated by Louis Al-Hajj, who was a Nazi war criminal converted to Islam. And in the introduction to his Arabic language edition, uh, he, he refers to Hitler as a great jihadist. It's the addition to Mein Kampf, and also the
Meaning
protocols.
Hitler is a great follower of Muhammad.
Yeah, well, he's an ally. Let's put it that way.
Hitler himself, I don't believe, would he have accepted this honorable uh,
No, no,
designation.
he wouldn't. But there was a time, for a brief time, when Al Husseini went from Baghdad to Tehran, and then from Tehran to Europe, where he finally met up with Hitler. And there was the Nazi propagandists were toying with the idea of promoting Hitler as the 12th Imam. But they finally figured out that probably wouldn't fly.
Wouldn't fly. Why? Because Hitler is too heavy, or because the position of Imam is so nothing? Why wouldn't it?
Well, I think they came to the realization that the Shiites wouldn't buy it. They had their own candidates for that honor, and Hitler's not one of them. Uh, but Hitler was a friend to the jihadists, to Al Husseini, to I mean, and later, Hamas stems directly from that line of influence and thinking. Uh, and we see what we have with Hamas now, but there are very important differences between Hamas and Nazis. Okay, Nazis do not understand the extermination of the Jews as a ticket into heaven or paradise. It's for the sake of the purification of the folk, the people, the race, and so on. They don't. The Nazis, the soldiers, had Gott mit uns, God is with us, on their belt buckles. But they didn't shout, God is great, or anything like
Well,
that.
that Gott mit uns was taken from First World War, from before Nazis.
Yeah, yes, it was a tradition.
Right.
Um, it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't it wasn't in the name of God. It's in the name of Hitler, the name of the folk. Ein Reich, ein Volk, ein Führer. Right, one Reich, one people, one leader. This is the mantra. Uh, why do the jihadists shout Allahu Akbar when they're killing somebody? I mean, that very few people ask that. They just kind of accept, well, that's how they are. What are they saying? They know exactly what they're saying. They know exactly what they're saying.
What are they saying?
They're saying, God, I be praised. I am doing your will. Please accept me into your arms, into paradise, and my family. Shaheed wins salvation for 70 family members as a shaheed, as a martyr. That's why the families love them. They name schools after them, right? They have shrines to them because they are saving their family by spilling Jewish blood. Okay.
But they're not afraid that instead of going to heaven, they're going to hell directly? Because it seems to me that they are not martyrs, they are murderers.
Of course, but they are murdering. They're not murdering. They're eliminating evil. This is Sayyid Qutb. Sayyid Qutb and the Nazis both satanized the Jews. You can't, once you satanize the Jew, you dehumanize the Jew. You can't murder someone who's not human. And you de-victimize. A Jew cannot be a victim. Therefore, you have the phenomenon of denial, or denial of victimhood. Either it didn't happen, or the Jews did it. This is another one, another take on it. The Jews did it so they would have an excuse to go into Gaza and commit genocide. Notice how most of the women's groups and human rights groups have been silent, if not celebrating October 7th. In the selection of the date also
I have to say, that in our world today, there's no more human rights groups. Not in my mind.
no, that's right.
They're all
You see,
dead. They died October 7th.
they okay. Uh, they died with the dehumanization of the Jews.
No, they died by
And
refusing to notice the genocide, the horrible thing that took place on October 7th.
they lost their own humanity,
Yeah,
right? The soul suffers what it inflicts.
yeah.
As I deny the humanity of the Jew, I lose my own humanity. I lose my standing where human rights is concerned. As you say, they're gone. They're absent. Um, so the Jews can't be victims if they're evil, if they're demons, if they're like Satan. And this, I mean, this is manifest with the jihadists. For the jihadists, killing Jews is a matter of saving their soul. It can't be negotiated with. Article 11 of the Hamas charter and several articles in the PLO charter say there can be no negotiation over Palestine. So it makes me a little nuts when I hear two-state solution talks. There's no one to.
And when they say Palestine, which land do they include there in that term?
We know what they include.
They include Jordan.
Jordan, what is now Israel, West Bank, Gaza.
No, I mean Jordan, east of Jordan River. Do they include the territory of Kingdom of Jordan?
Uh, Now, no, but that's
So
Jordan
they
was.
decided to give up that because it's already ruled by Muslims, right?
Yeah, well, and I think about 40% of the Jordanian population are identify as Palestinian,
Maybe 70%.
maybe more, yes.
Yeah.
But of course, as you know, Jordan was established as a two-state solution, so to say, in
On
1922.
the territory of Mandate Palestine.
Yeah, exactly. The British did not allow Jewish settlement in Jordan, what they called Transjordan.
Yeah, yeah.
So there have been several failed two-state solutions. In 1919, Chaim Weizmann and King Faisal came to an understanding, let's say, that the Weizmann-Faisal agreement, which they wrote up in Paris, and they identified, this portion will go of the land will belong to the Jews and the rest to the Arabs. Of course, then even and now, I mean, the Arab people are highly tribalized. Some areas more so than others. There are more than 100 tribes in Saudi Arabia, for example. So King Faisal, I mean, he spoke for some, but certainly not for all. Anyway, that didn't work out. 1936, the Peel, under the British mandate, recommended two-state solution. Of course, we know about the UN Resolution 181 of 1940, November 1947. So in every case, the Jews are say, okay, great. And the Arabs say, no, unacceptable. Why? Because, at least from a jihadist point of view, that all of that land belongs to what's called the Waqf, WAQF, the Waqf. The Waqf is land that had been invaded and conquered by the Muslims historically, brought under Muslim rule, and therefore remains under Muslim rule forever. When the Muslims lose control, like in Spain, I'm talking Spain, North Africa, Israel, when they lose control, they have a religious obligation to regain control.
Hmm. This is a very interesting point. However, I'm going to try to make a counterpoint. I think it's in Surah 5:1 or 5:2 in Quran. Muhammad clearly states,
Froze up on me, Alexander.
what is it?
I lost you for a second there. Go ahead.
I think it's Quran, Surah 5:1 or 5:2. Wow, problem was the internet. Hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
Muhammad quotes Moses telling Jews to go to the promised land and conquer it without any fear. So within the Quran
Yeah,
itself, all lands are Muslim except that promised land that belongs to Jews. Now, of course, then Quran later on goes on to argue that the current Jews are not really Jews, and
yeah,
therefore they don't belong there. But that is a different story. But if we are Jews and today's jihadists kill us as Jews, therefore they recognize us as Jews. They
yeah,
don't kill us as Frenchmen or Canadians.
right. Yes, no, that you're absolutely right with regard to the the statement in the Quran that this belongs to the Jews,
Mm.
this land. It's problematic for the jihadists, and they never quote it. They don't invoke that passage. But the Quran, like many scriptures and many traditions, lends itself to cherry picking if you have an agenda that you're trying to justify. It does. I mean, and again, as you say, different parts of the Quran, depending on when it was written down, will have often contradictory views, particularly with regard to the Jews, but not only the Jews, with other matters too. But you see, the in the West, most of us, certainly left-wing liberal intellectuals, I think of the importance of religion in these Muslim societies. It's everywhere. It's in the schools, in the media, entertainment, politics, the institutions, the everyday conversational language. If you ask in Arabic, how are you doing? The answer is, I'm fine. Allah be praised. It's like when you learn Spanish, como está usted? Muy bien, gracias. It's Allah be praised. It's in the vernacular. It's everywhere. So on TV shows, the sermons of the Islamic clerics are popular TV shows. Who among the left-wing intellectuals watches sermons on TV? Christian, Jew, or whatever. They have, most of them I know have contempt for religion, except Islam. Except Islam.
Including members of LGBT plus community.
Yeah, they're vocal supporters of Hamas.
Yeah,
This was
I
why I
guess
think
they want to be thrown from the roof.
but do they understand what they're supporting? I don't know.
I think they understand it very well. That's why they don't go there. They understand very well.
That's why they stay
But
away.
they hate Jews here. You see, the jihadists are over there killing Jews there. But here, you need to hate Jews because Jews are the founders of the negative attitude toward their way of life.
Oh, yeah. Now, okay, you've hit on a very important point. Um, there's a scene in a movie called The Book Thief. It's about it's based on a novel. It's about a little girl in Nazi Germany whose mother was arrested for being a communist, and a foster family takes her in. They're not Jews, but they're hiding a Jewish guy in their basement. So one day, the little girl's out with her foster father. They're very close, and she sees the Gestapo shove him to the ground when he says something that they're taking the Jewish shopkeeper away. So they rough up her father. She goes back to the house, goes down to the basement where they're hiding the Jew named Max, and asks Max, why do they hate the Jews so much? And Max says, because we remind them of their humanity. Now, what are we reminded of when we're reminded of our humanity? And why would you kill somebody for reminding you? That's what this is all about. How do we understand humanity? How do we understand the holiness of the other human being? The Jews have a millennial tradition from Torah concerning the holiness of the human being. Each human being is a child of God, created by God, an emanation from God. Every soul is connected to every other soul through the Creator. And we're all children of Adam. The Hebrew word for
We all
human
one family, regardless of race, regardless of our origins. We're all one family.
exactly. You get it, Alexander. You get it. We're all, the rabbis ask, why does God start with one and not with two, with Adam? And they say it's so that no one can say my side of the family is better than your side. There's just one side of the family.
If we did come all from amoeba, it was only from one amoeba.
Well said. Well said. So we're out. The Hebrew word for human being is Ben Adam.
Yeah.
child of Adam. This, you can see how this undermines race-based thinking, race-based thinking, gender-based thinking, class-based thinking is all antithetical to this ancient Jewish teaching and testimony. So the and all of the race-based thinking, class, gender are all ultimately totalitarian in nature. Wokeism is totalitarian. If you're not with the program, you will be canceled. Okay.
If you say one word wrong outside of the established framework, you are
Yeah.
no longer with us.
Yes. So you can see how Jewish teaching would be a threat to this way of thinking. Jewish teaching is about fundamental human connection. Racist thinking,
Connection and the ability of every human being to decide for himself what is right and what is wrong. And those Nazis and jihadists and everybody else, that look and are disgusted by us, because by our very being, the way I see it, we say, j'accuse.
well, we question. Jews are encouraged. God Himself encourages us to question Him.
Yeah.
God wants, when Abraham argues with God over Sodom and Gomorrah,
B'Tselem Elohim.
yeah, God smiles.
Yeah.
He likes it.
Mm.
It's the only place in the Torah where you see God thinking to himself, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm going to do? He tells him because he wants Abraham to say, hey, wait a minute. So we have this, but in Judaism, we have a tradition of what's called machlochet, dispute.
Yeah.
We are encouraged to question. God is in the question. The Hebrew word for question, she'elah, she'elah. The El is in the middle, which means God. This totalitarian thinking will not tolerate questioning. So here you got the Jew in the room who's saying, hey, wait a minute, and has a question that cannot be tolerated. Plus, it goes back to where lies the holiness of the human being? Is it in the race, the gender, the feelings, how you feel? No. The with the revelation of the holiness of the other human comes an ethical obligation to see the dearness of the other person is to be implicated in my actions. So I'm like Cain. What are the two questions God asked Cain? Where's your brother? What have you done? The Jews are asking humanity and themselves, where's your brother and what have you done? And it's God who asks. It's God who asks. There's no hiding. And I think that's why we want many of us, including Jews. Jews themselves are not immune to Jew hatred, unfortunately.
15% of Jews in New York today support so-called Palestinians, meaning they support Hamas.
Yes.
15%.
It's mind-boggling. It's gut-wrenching. It's they yes, Hamas.
David, we're running out of time. If you don't mind, I'd like to invite you for more conversation about the state of our people and the world, if you don't mind.
Sure, it would be my pleasure.
Thank
Thank you. Alexander, I very much enjoy talking with you and learning from you.
Well, I learned a lot
Thank you.
from you without any exaggeration. Without any exaggeration. I mean, our conversation made me focus on certain things that I knew, but they were not really that specific. But during our conversation, many things cleared up for me.
I'm so pleased. For me too. For
Thank you.
me too.
Anyway, as they say in China, sei gesund, and hope to
And
see
you
you.
have a good Purim. Have a good Purim.
And you too. Hag Purim Sameach.
Hag Purim Sameach. Okay. Thank you. Stay in touch. Stay in touch.
Thank you. We will.